Okay, very good. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Those whose time gotten into their evening, and what a pleasure to host very young and accomplished GNRC members and faith leaders from around Europe to discuss the issue of COVID-19 and what the faith communities are doing around COVID-19. I will be your co-moderator this evening, and to join me is, my name is Mustafa Yusuf Ali, Secretary General of the Global Network of Religions for Children and the Director of the Nairobi office of Arigato International. Joining me to moderate this webinar is Ms. Maria Lucia Uribe, who is the Director of Arigato International Office in Geneva and the Ethics Education for Children. Now, this regional webinar series has started to basically respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, in which Arigato International and the Global Network of Religions for Children are currently engaged in a global campaign called Faith in Action for Children. So this is part of the global campaign that Arigato International has initiated to address the challenges, particularly those challenges that are facing children around the world. The regional webinar series is organized as part of this global campaign, and we are co-organizing this webinar series with a number of our partners. Key amongst them is the International Dialogue Center in Vienna, CAI-CID. And this particular webinar will look into a few issues, and the key areas, and I'll mention very quickly just three. One is the success stories and lessons learned of how faith-inspired organizations are working locally to support, protect, and nurture children during these hard times. The second is, what are the main challenges and gaps that faith-inspired organizations are facing? And we will be listening very keenly to our panelists this evening that I'm going to introduce to you shortly. And lastly, the opportunities and recommendations that are there to strengthen and support children, including the most vulnerable. And to join us in this webinar, we have Mohammed, who is a child from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also a member of the Global Network of Religions for Children. We also are joined this evening by Milana, a child from Serbia and a member of the Global Network of Religions for Children. Welcome, Mohammed and Milana. Rabbi Stanley Cotton from Norwood Organization in the United Kingdom, Principal Examiner of Religious Studies and Associate of the Chartered Institute of Educational Assessors, will also be joining us. Also joining us is Ms. Zonimira Jakic, who is the GNRC Youth Leader in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Also joining us are Mr. Igor Mitrovic, Country and Programs Director for ADRA in Serbia, Ms. Laura Molnar, co-founder of Education for Change and also the GNRC Coordinator for Romania, and Ms. Fatmire Adjari from Peace Education Program, First Children's Embassy in the World in Macedonia, and also our GNRC contact person in Macedonia. So welcome to all our panelists. And we will be sharing with you the questions that we hope you're going to answer. And Maria Lucia will take it up from there, and she'll tell us how the webinar is going to run. Thank you very much. Welcome, all of you, the panelists and attendees, all those that are listening around the world. Thank you very much. Maria Lucia.
Sorry, thank you, Mustafa. It's a pleasure for me also to join and to engage in this dialogue with all of you. And so first of all, also welcome to the panelists, but also to the the participants who are joining us, and I think the numbers are increasing now, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the question box. It will be good also for you to, if you have questions, to ask those questions in the question box. And so how we will do this webinar, we'll have 7 panelists, and each panelist will have around 80 minutes for first round of questions. And this will take us to the first half of the webinar. And then we want to engage in dialogue, ask more questions to you. Maybe there will be connections within the different interventions that you will have, and also the questions from the participants. So we hope that you will also feel comfortable even asking questions to the other panelists as well. So we'll be starting with the children, and Mohammed and Milana. As you know, this panel discussion, this webinar, is about the impact of COVID-19 on children and young people, but also the response that faith-based organizations, faith-inspired organizations are having, particularly here in Europe. And so we'd like to start asking you, how have you experienced the pandemic in your own countries? Mohammed, you come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Milana, you come from Serbia. So I know that education has been stopped during these days, suspended. Some of you, I think, have been doing online learning, and now you are on holidays. And we don't know when the education will be reestablished as we know it. And so we'd like to hear from you how you have experienced the pandemic in terms of education, but also in your relations with others at home, and also if you have any insights of how children around you from your communities have also experienced the pandemic. So let us start with Milana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Milana, and I'm from Serbia, and I came from a summer educational center. I'm at this place because I'm volunteering in summer educational center, and we have very interesting program. And his name is the School of Goodwill. This project has been going on for 10 years since the founding of the Summer Educational Center. Numerous young volunteers have joined this program, providing free learning assistance to more than 300 children, mostly vulnerable groups. I attended the training for addition of new volunteers last year, but I also volunteered this year's, which was in an online format, where I learned with other volunteers the techniques of holding online classes across platforms and how to fill out a report of the progress with children. During the training, we did simulation of situations that can happen while working with children and parents. We worked in a small group, and we are welcome to share experience with it comes to working with children and parents. Are a very important factor in all this. Thanks to this project, I had the opportunity to work with various children, where I learned something from each of them. With the help of the coordinator, I learned a lot when it comes to access the children and various ways to adapt the material, make it more interesting for children. As part of the project, we also had creative workshops where I worked with children and realized how much I actually lost track of what true happiness is, and how children does need to detect themselves and respect of them and their opinions. So I also had held math classes at the migrant center, which helped me learn a lot about their way of life and faith and the desire to progress. It was also a good opportunity for me to improve my English, because that's how we communicate with children there. Since I have been a part of this project, and many other one in the Sombra Educational Center related to children, I have realized how I want my future job to be related to working with them. Thanks to all this project, I realized that I love a lot when I see children happy, only because I have take my time them and how good working with children. We always preserve your child side that we love. That's all of me.
Thank you, Milana. I'm very glad to hear that you have been engaged and during this time. You know, volunteer work, I think, for children, young people, have been a very meaningful way to keep connected. And I want to build a little bit on this, Milana, and maybe from your own perspective at home. So how have you, I mean, you have been volunteering, but any other experience that you want to share from your own experience, apart from volunteering, contact with your school friends at home? You know, are you allowed to go out during this time? You know, a little bit of what is happening in Serbia for children and young people.
This period for young people and child in Serbia is very complicated because school don't work, school is online, and we contact with social media, and that's everything. We don't go out because in quarantine, and have and now I'm on holiday. And that's it. What's special in Serbia, because now we have many people went positive on COVID, and that is very, very complicated situation now.
Yes, I understand. Thank you, Milana. This is good to get us started, and so let us hear now from Mohammed. Mohammed, welcome. And the question is similar to you. How have you experienced the pandemic? You know, what has been maybe your concern during this time, and maybe learnings as well that you have gained during this time, Mohammed?
Hello to everyone. My name is Mohammed and I'm 15 years old. I finished primary school and it's my pleasure to be part of this webinar. I participated in workshops organized by the Women's Association Mosaic in cooperation with GNRC Arigato International. The workshops include students from primary and secondary schools. We marked important dates such as September 21, International Day of Peace, where together with the religious leaders, we had visits to religious institutions in Sarajevo, Mostar, Livno, and Bugojno. On October 17, we marked the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty in the World. I participated in competitions and workshops on how we can eradicate poverty. Together with the religious leaders and members of the Mosaic Association, we visited to poor families. Also on November 20, I participated in the joint celebration of the Day of Prayer and Action for Children. Talk was a central event in which students from all schools, religious leaders, and important people from the community participated. My school finish in my primary school wasn't so good as I imagined it would be. With COVID-19 and with pandemic in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are strict measures. Schools were closed and persons under 18 were in full quarantine. We doesn't have rights on movement and meeting with our friends. School desks were replaced with phones and tablets, but many of my friends have difficulties even with that. My biggest worry is like student at the end of primary school is how to replace knowledge from books and from a teacher with knowledge from computer and TV. Will I miss something from important part of lesson? Working on computer, using computer in right way for making education not only games and fun. Community can make action for collecting money for poor students without internet and computers, making webinars for information in our near community, and with more common work we can do more. And that's it.
Mohammed, this is very good to hear from you, and I think, and I try to put myself in the place of young people like you, that you know, life is always in community with friends, and now you are in lockdown without access to your friends. And as you mentioned, you know, some have access to the internet, some have computers, but not all, and that makes it also difficult. I like that you are also thinking forward and thinking of how communities can support, and as you mentioned, supporting children who are in the most more vulnerable situations, and webinars and activities like this that can help children, as you said, that at times, I think now on holidays it becomes more difficult because there is no access to education. So as you said, you know, video games and TV is what you have as access to some entertainment. So I like your suggestion of organizing webinars, activities, and I think also as young people like you and Milana that are actively involved in youth activities in your countries, there are opportunities to connect and maybe do other things that can benefit other children and young people. So this is very good, Mohammed. We will be asking a few more questions more on your experiences as we go through the webinar. And now we will move to the next panelist. Thank you. Mustafa, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Lucia, and it's been a pleasure to listen to the two children. Let's move on to Ms. Zonimira. Zonimira, you're a youth leader in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The pandemic has affected all in unprecedented ways. There is very high unemployment rates around the world, and I'm sure in Bosnia and Herzegovina this is the case. Poverty has increased. The uncertainty facing the children is something that children are grappling with in all over the world. As a youth leader in the GNRC in your country, you have actively been involved in the response to children and families during this period. What have you heard and learned from them? And secondly, what are the main challenges they face?
Greetings to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. Greetings from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Sarajevo. I will do this presentation in a creative way. So today I will show you how you can beat Corona and how you can inspire one child with only one word. Please just pay attention on this presentation, and on every slide you will see one problem, and for every problem you have to write your attribute with which you can solve this problem. After my speech, you will see what we'll do with it. I started to volunteer in Arigati International when I was 13 years old, and with the support of Arigati International, in 10 years of my volunteer work, I just volunteer in different global NGOs such as UNDP, OSCE Mission, Council of Europe, Beha Futures Foundation, Catholic Services in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Vatican Services in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and my highest position now in Bosnia and Herzegovina is a youth advisor of a presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina with support of IEEE, Bosnia and Herzegovina Futures Foundation, and SEBA mentoring program. I started my first startup. And also I'm volunteering for Mosaic, which Mohammed is a member also. And together we are organizing a GNRC project in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the youth group in Bosnia and Herzegovina has a number of 35 students. Please, next slide. Thank you. In Bosnia and Herzegovina now is a status of epidemic, no pandemic of coronavirus, and it has more than 10,000 infected people in country, and of them is 4,000 children and youth only in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the past time of 2020, in the past time of COVID-19 period, I worked with more than 1,000 children and youth directly, and 100 families in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and indirectly it has 5,000 of them around Bosnia and Herzegovina and European Union. And today I will show you the main problems that they are facing in this period of COVID-19. So we will see now the problems. Okay, when we are speaking about children and youth, first that they are feeling alone in a home are negative feelings such as fear, stress, confusion and depression. And we are, as a youth group of a GNRC in Bosnia and Herzegovina, organized 2 solutions, which are youth phone and meeting with a doctor, where children had the opportunity to speak with doctors and psychologists about their problems and to get more infos about COVID-19. Also, our biggest problem in Bosnia was it's still a violence. We organized with the Council of Europe in Bosnia and Herzegovina online workshops, Stop and Call Me a Secret Friend, where we organize workshops for children how to recognize violence, and they could report it on a youth phones and also to the police. And also we manage it for a cyber bullying, and we have a good structure there, and we are communicating with Bosnia and Herzegovina institutions. Our 4th problem, next slide please, was online school. Now children are in vacations, but in an online school, children face many problems, such as lack of technology and poverty. But I just want to show you one a good practice that Bosnia and Herzegovina Futures program made online tutoring program for children around Bosnia and Herzegovina with 30 educators or volunteers, and we tutors educate more than 300 students due to Corona period, and some of them was the organizers and volunteers from a GNRC youth group in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And with a lack of technology, I personally went to some of stakeholders, like 30 of them in Sarajevo and Mostar, which is in a part of Herzegovina, and together we donate 20 primary schools and high schools around the Bosnia and Herzegovina technologies, and also manage one education about how to use those technologies and how to use online platforms. Next. When we are speaking about children and families, we saw violations of children's rights in orphan homes, but also the violating of those children's rights on children with disabilities. And there we are organizing group panels and collaborations with Ministry of Justice and Social Services, and also workshops for educators and parents how to behave in a stressful situation. You mentioned, Mustafa, that we had a lot of problems with the quits of jobs on parents and families. So we solved that problem only in Canton of Sarajevo. So that is a small part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but we are proud of it. We are organizing a collaboration with the stakeholders in Sarajevo, where stakeholders retraining those parents to get new online jobs, and they had a payment also for it, and financial support from those stakeholders. Next. And when we are speaking about the children and professors and a youth, our problem was that online school behavior and criteria of the professors, and we organize a panel discussion, and great solutions for Ministry of Education. That after our together panel, they organize online courses for professors, and before the state also Beha Futures Foundation organized online education for professors. And also we, in a cooperation with Mosaic in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we organized webinars where we spoke about how to raise your child in this period, what are the main bad and good things during the COVID-19, what are the best practices, and those practices from that webinar, that conclusions we just shared with our regional partners of AGNRC. And also we were in an online course from Argati International that Maria Lucia led it from Transformative Pedagogy, and there is a next circle that our students will be there. And also the main thing and the main support that we have, that will be on the next slide, is that we are speaking about children and religious leaders. The main problem was the lockdown, because religious leaders didn't have an opportunity to get their rituals or celebrations. So as we youth of AGNRC Bosnia and Herzegovina organized the online platforms of education for religious leaders, how they can use those online platforms, and how they can lead the prayers, rituals, and celebrations. So they had live streaming, and also we used that opportunity to make workshops for youth and children about multi-religious colorations, and how to bring out stereotypes and prejudices, and how to celebrate diversity. And also we organized a Call Your Leader. That was the motivation for youth and children from religious leaders. They were calling each other and gave them opportunity to speak and opportunity to get their talents. And also we organize webinars, and the main conclusions from the webinars, I will just read two quotes from our two religious leaders. One was from a Catholic community. His name is Fra Josip Pikic, and he concluded the webinar, which was like 2 days ago, with a sentence: "Let's not be afraid, let's protect ourselves, let's be intermedica to each other, peacemakers of responsibility, and let's put God first, because then everything else is in the right place." And also the quote from Efendi Amit Hachakaloci, who is coming from a Islamic community, and he said, "With greater faith in God, we develop his trust, and we only win with our patience, and we lose with a fear and two strong words." And as a youth leader of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Europe, I will read you my quote that I'm telling all of you, and that will be, I think, inspiration for you. It's every novel begins with a word. A single good deed can lead a child to become a hero of good and change. Be the good deed in child's life, because then you become the beginning of his novel. And I will conclude my speech with those attributes that you wrote. Now you are on a paper have more than eight attributes, and when every panelist will speak, you have to cross 2 of them, and after this meeting you will have only a 2 on your paper. I just invite you to go in your local community to speak with the children and youth, and then cross once, and then one will stay on that paper, and that will be your inspiration for your work for the children and youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zvonimira, for the uplifting contribution that you've just shared with us, with all those responses and collaborations that you have engaged with faith leaders in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now will go to Rabbi Stanley Cotton. Rabbi Cotton, you are a religious leader, and many a times the places of worship, the faith leaders, these are places where people from various spiritual traditions go to seek solace, and it is a place where people can go and have comfort, and faith leaders like yourself are there to offer support, to build resilience of communities, to go through such difficult moments as this. Through the work as a rabbi supporting families and children, how have you experienced this period? And secondly, what are the main challenges that your community, particularly families and children, face, and yourself as our religious leader? Let me ask you all the questions so that you take your full 8 minutes. With the current situation in the UK, how do you see the role of faith communities in supporting community cohesion and the well-being of the people generally? Rabbi Cotton. Rabbi Cotton, did you get the questions? Are you online?
Rabbi Cotton, can you unmute your microphone?
Maybe as we wait for Rabbi Cotton to sort out the technical challenges, perhaps Maria Lucia,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Rabbi Cotton.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Sorry, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this seminar, the Arigato International webinar. I can see the screen, but technical issues here prevent you seeing me. I'd like to thank everybody and thank Vera for being a panelist here, and it's very interesting to hear everybody's contribution. We know that children, perhaps more than most, have been suffering during this COVID pandemic. As we've heard, lack of schooling, lack of social mobility, activities which children thrive on, and play, and issues which are so important to the young. And so we've tried to focus on their needs. I have various roles, actually. I'm a community rabbi in a small Jewish community in Ruislip, which is in West London, not far from perhaps either Wembley Stadium, maybe if you've heard of where Wembley, or Heathrow Airport, where people used to travel to. Part of the largest synagogal body in Europe, of the United Synagogue, which has 40,000 members. And there's a lot of things that the overall organisation have been doing to focus on adults and particularly children as well. They've provided 330 households with special meals for our Sabbath, for Shabbat, with almost 2,000 individual meals. There's been also essential day-to-day food parcels that have been sent around. I've delivered myself a number of food parcels, and that's still ongoing. About 1,100 have been delivered by all the volunteers. One interesting thing that we're doing is supporting families of asylum seekers, and those eligible to help from our centres are actually only those with children, families with children. It's interesting. I suppose otherwise they couldn't cope, and they had to unfortunately prioritise. And they have drop-in centres taking them their food, toiletries, household goods, as well as continuing to provide the vouchers that they normally get for food from our organisation. In addition to that, they've been cooking meals in synagogue kitchens, collecting food, offering emotional support, wellness checks, support for the sick who've been discharged from hospital. So you can imagine a whole range of social activities, picking up prescriptions, medications, and going shopping, and helping people through online programs, and that'll help the parents to in turn, of course, help the children. That's just some of the activities of the synagogue and the synagogue organisation. Now, I think it was mentioned before, perhaps, that I'm also the rabbi of Norwood, which is an organisation which has a very large focus on children. It's a special needs organisation, so it deals with adult special needs, but also special needs for children, and also any children's issues and children's problems. So you can imagine we've been working quite hard there, and I'm the rabbi there to give spiritual and cultural direction. It's got a reasonable sized professional staff, and just to give you an idea, there's 600 volunteers as well. So it's a reasonably sized organisation. So what we did straight away was we offered a single point of access for referrals and advice line. Like everywhere else, people moved to home but they, instead of our normal family centres that people came to because of COVID, we did things from people who work from home, but they've offered a helpline which people can phone into and maintain referrals to the social workers, to different therapists. There's a whole range of different therapists. I'd like to mention one of our services, which I hope will be of interest. It's called Buckets and Spades. Buckets and Spades is really a facility that gives respite care for having young children who have particular complex multiple educational needs. So you have children in wheelchairs, maybe children that are non-verbal. I mean, we're not so independent, and that have various needs. And this offers parents a chance of respite. Then from there, from our centre, they can go to the school. Unfortunately, now many times the school is closed. So they've had online lessons from the school, and our social workers there, our carers, support workers, have been providing lessons for the children, all sorts of activities, gardening activities, and they've had long-term children there and a few small short-term children as well in there for a short time. And this is an interesting facility because, as we know, this Norwood, as obviously I am rabbi, this is a Jewish facility, but this particular facility has Jewish and non-Jewish children in as well. All children are eligible to come if it's just a matter of having the need. They're assessed by need and not by faith for this particular facility, and therefore it's not a surprise that they've been celebrating a whole range of different festivals, whether it's our Passover or Ramadan or Easter during that time. So that's been quite an interesting experience there at that particular facility. So that's one of the things that we do, along with all the other things that you may expect, really, of helping for food donations to families, art and craft materials for children to keep them occupied. They established a specific Norwood Facebook page with regular activities and resources. And there was also a big seminar that was organised with our people here in London and a professor in Jerusalem on the subject of COVID. What does COVID-19 mean to children with special needs? So, as well as educational, there's psychotherapeutic services, Zoom counselling sessions where this can be done safely for the young people. The young people have particular vulnerabilities. As we've mentioned, also social work and family support. This is now being done, as we said before, by remote. And overall, they've got the strap line of help. The strap line, the Norwood motto, if you like, is here for you to Norwood. So that anyone who needs help can come and they know where they can go. Now, the third and final thing, which is mainly of my main activities which I'm involved in, is I also happen to be the senior Jewish hospital chaplain. So I go to support the Jewish chaplains and liaise with the lead chaplains, the overall chaplains within the various hospitals. And as it won't be a surprise for you to know that during COVID, hospital visiting has been severely restricted. But I'm pleased to say that our hospital visitors, who are our volunteers, are able to go in and visit the Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is the main hospital in London for children and children's need. And I mention it and I single it out because it does have children from all over the world coming with their complex needs, and our visitors have been going in there. So they're the main things that I'm involved in. And I'll just finish by saying that COVID really has given us a terrible crisis, but also in some ways an opportunity, which I would never wish had it never happened. But in some ways, we always have to look at opportunities for personal development, focus on what's really important in our lives, that, overall, and this is maybe directed at adults, whether we look at people as people and other people as commodities, or not have the power and looking at consumerism or power and other considerations, and to think of the other person. And that just as the pandemic doesn't respect borders or doesn't know of borders, we should try and help each other across borders. And that's what's so wonderful about the activity that everyone's engaged in today. And I really will wind up now by mentioning a Jewish festival that's coming up this Wednesday evening on Thursday. It's called Tisha B'Av. It's the 9th of Av, when Jews mourn the loss of the temple in Jerusalem, and it's our saddest day in the calendar. This year, it corresponds with the Wednesday corresponds with the first day of the Hajj pilgrimage, and the second day, when people go to Saudi, or they would go to Saudi Arabia if they can, devout Muslims, and the second day is the day of Arafah, if I pronounced that rightly, the day when part of the Quranic verse was which Muslims believe was given to them. Now, in Jerusalem, a sheikh and a rabbi got together earlier this week and to pledge support and encouragement for each other and for what's important, and to stress what's important with what brings us together, and that we should try and avoid misunderstandings, and really to try to strive to develop baseless love, to develop love and not hatred, and love for others. And with all these difficulties, we should rise above them, get to the challenges, move forward, and find solutions together. And I'm sure in the spirit of everybody working together this afternoon, today, I'm sure that we are moving forward and becoming better people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Stanley Cotton, for that very positive note, ending your speech and your contribution to this particular webinar. We will move on to the next speaker, and I'll hand you back to Maria Lucia Uribe.
Thank you, Mustafa. I think as the discussion evolves, we can see, how we are looking at also vulnerabilities and children. And I'm glad that the Rabbi Stanley also spoke about children with disabilities, as we often see that are those that are the most vulnerable, and those who have already been affected one way or another are the ones that have been mostly impacted by the pandemic. And in this light, I welcome Igor, who is the country director for ADRA in Serbia. And so ADRA is a Christian-based organization, Igor, and you are doing multiple things to support the most vulnerable communities in Serbia. And I know that among the many things you do, you are supporting the Roma community and migrants in Serbia. So the question is, looking at this with the vulnerabilities, and that we know that these communities are affected, that have been affected in their fulfillment of their rights and in many ways, but during the pandemic, those issues become exacerbated. So I would like to hear from you, how has the pandemic affected these most vulnerable groups, and within those groups of the community, children and young people? And as a faith-inspired organization, Igor, responding to the needs of the most vulnerable, what lessons learned can you draw from the work that you have been doing and to improve the lives of these children and young people in those most vulnerable communities? Igor, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and to Arigato International and all the involved ones. It's great to be part of this sharing of experience. Well, it may be interesting to say that I've been with ADRA the past 10 years, and I've been a pastor for the last 20 years. So I think both perspectives help me to, to be firstly interested in this kind of approach, and then maybe, maybe to share something of some use. Well, ADRA is the humanitarian and development agency of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I would describe it as a Protestant church. Maybe I should share something that I was obsessed with for some time, and especially was aware of while preparing this short presentation. Firstly, I'm aware that all of our experiences are more or less relevant to the audience, to the colleagues, depending on how much our context resembles the context of the one who is listening, and trying to see whether it can be of some use. So Serbia is a specific country. I guess this post-communist or transition country is similar to some others in the region. So some will be able to use this as a useful experience. Some of the others are not, so will not be able to use it as very useful. Secondly, I'm always trying to see how professional faith-based organizations or faith communities can specifically add value to the responses, because sometimes I'm trying to describe ADRA to myself and what we are doing, and we are really, to put it like frankly, are doing similar things like other civil society organizations. And I'm always trying to see how and whether we are adding something specifically valuable that the communities are in need of. So Roma population, talking about Roma children or children from the Romani background, with Romani background, given that they are in the very bad predicament of poverty, sometimes even absolute poverty as a community, children and education of Roma children suffers exactly in the same way like many other communities around the world. Basically, coming from the experience of around 100 children we are presently working with from 3 Roma substandard settlements in the Belgrade area, in the capital of Serbia. The disadvantages they are facing as far as schooling is concerned is that their level of Serbian language is very low. Their parents, although willing to support, are not really able to support them in doing their homework and everything related to it. There are not enough personal pedagogical assistants in the school who should be there to support children who have a, let's say, disadvantaged starting point, lacking preschool education and so forth. And overall, the economical situation of the family is not really helping neither. So around 5th grade, there is a substantial dropout of all Roma children. So basically, only 5 or 10% of all children will complete primary education. So this is their general predicament. The COVID-19 added, as you said, to this, given that the normal schooling was transferred to online schooling, they had to have access to TV, to a stable internet, to have available devices in order to really continue their normal schooling. And around 72 out of 100 children simply didn't have neither technical preconditions I mentioned, neither personal assistance of online assistance of teachers. So basically, 3/4 of them were kind of sentenced to drop out immediately. We tried to jump in, and we provided 5 professionals who kind of were the bridge for these children to continue education. And around 25% of those we worked initially with managed to complete the previous school year. The main problem was that most of them lacked, as I said, devices, internet, which I think is the same like many other children from similar backgrounds. Where I see that the faith communities, from my experience, were able to kind of be part of the response. We tried to reach out as many willing members of faith communities, Christian, primarily our own, the Adventist Church, and we found a response of 3 or 4 people who were able to join our professional team as volunteers, because the narrow bottleneck we realized is that we need many more mentors for the online support than we were able to pay to provide payment for. So we saw that once we reached out, the response was well, for our circumstances it was good. And we believe that this should be done, and this is something we should be doing more. So the volunteer base can be expected to be created also, or maybe mainly, with people from faith communities. Secondly, we are trying to work with the Muslim community because most of the children are with Muslim religious background, and we see that this is the critical thing we should be working on. And maybe later on I'll explain more how and in what way this can be done. I'll stop here.
Igor, thanks for this insight into the response of your organization and trying to think what is unique from a faith-inspired organization to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable. Very curious to know what you have to say about this interfaith collaboration and reaching out to Muslim communities. So I think when we start the round of questions, it would be good that you can share more about that. And also interested to hear on the needs of in many places of having more people volunteering to support. And I think that's very critical when the community becomes part of the response. And I think faith communities with the members of the communities inspired by their faith have a very critical role to play in volunteering. So I think these are very important insights into the discussion. But we are going to move now to Laura Molnar, who is the coordinator for the GNRC in Romania, but also is the founder and director of Education for Change. So working mainly with teachers and children and families during this time, Laura. And so we know that, of course, when education has been disrupted, this has had many impacts on children and young people. And some impacts might not be very easy to see, as there may be socio-emotional impacts, and maybe we will not even see them until later on. But we know that children have been impacted in many ways. So the question, Laura, from your experience and this perspective, and I think you are in very close discussions and collaborations with teachers and young people, what impact have you seen of the COVID-19 pandemic and the confinement in particular as well on children's social, emotional, and spiritual well-being? And I think moving into the response that your organization is doing, how can educators, but also faith communities and faith actors can do to respond to and support the well-being of children and young people? Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, for the first part of the question, the COVID-19 pandemic is harming health, the material, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being of children worldwide. However, most affected are the vulnerable children, according with the UNICEF report. Children from family living in poverty, refugee and migrant children, children living in overcrowded dwellings, including children detained in the justice system, immigration detention, or confined in orphanages and other institutions, children with disabilities, and like Igor mentioned, in Eastern European country, we also have to add Roma children as vulnerable group. I will ask Marjan for the assistance to manage the slide of the presentation. So, second slide, please. Yes, next one, please. So, to data, 188 countries have imposed countrywide school closure, affecting more than 1.5 billion children and youth, according with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The measures taken to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated pre-existing risk, reduced access to education, social and health services, limited work option for adults. That means growing inequality in parents' resources and the quality of children's home environments, higher incidence of domestic violence. Children cannot express very clear their emotions, so may respond to stress in different ways. Common responses include having difficulty sleeping, bedwetting, having pain in the stomach or head, being anxious, withdrawn, angry, clingy, or afraid to be left alone. Teenagers experience loneliness, sadness, even depressive symptoms, anxiety, frustration, fury. They can lose their sense of control, belonging, or connection. Well, next, please. If to be able to answer to the second part of the question, I will focus on 5 directions. First is strengthen children's and youth resilience and nurture their well-being. Protect children's health and safety. Children's empowerment and participation. Opportunities for healing and growth. And support parents and caregivers. Strengthen children's resilience and nurture their social, emotional, and spiritual being. It's well-being. It's very important to build safe spaces through WhatsApp, school platform, or social media with restricted access, where children can feel seen and heard, where they can share their emotion, can exchange their experience, even learn one from the other how to replace time spent online or on screens with other attractive, healthy activities, family games, cooking, singing, dance, physical exercises, prayers, meditation, mindfulness, grounding exercises, or relaxation exercises. These are only a few examples that children suggest in our meeting we had during this period, and I wanted to share with you because I learned a lot from them during this period. Also, it's important to offer them opportunities to interact with their colleagues in their families and their families in a positive way, with gratitude, appreciation, compassion, kindness. Not all children know how to relate positively, so they may need our guidance. Protect children's health and safety. Help children and youth to be correctly informed about COVID-19 pandemic and preventive measures, providing age-appropriate facts about what has happened, explaining what could happen in a reassuring way, giving them clear examples on what they can do to help protect themselves and others from infection. It's important to have awareness campaign, hotlines and counseling services for children at risk of violence in their home or cyberbullying and online sexual exploitation. Now more than ever, children are in the risk to be exposed to harmful or illegal content online. So it's important to offer them safe e-learning environment. Empower children and encourage their participation by offering opportunities for children and youth to raise their voices. Develop children critical thinking by discussing about the reality around them, helping them identify lessons learned about themselves and the others in this period. Emphasize that children and youth can contribute to their own and to the other safety and well-being, suggest way and offer proper context and opportunities to do that. Discussing about ways to behave proactively can also help kids regain some sense of control, so I consider it's important. Being ethical role model for children and youth, remember that the virus doesn't follow geographical boundaries, ethnicities, age, or ability of gender. So teach them to not stigmatize their peers or tease anyone about being sick. Offer example by respecting all measures of social protection and offer positive models of empathy and social responsibility. Promote together the rights of vulnerable children to school, health, safe environments. A lot of children told me that they don't want to be seen as vulnerable victims, but they want to be partners in our actions. Opportunities for healing and growth. Religions and belief are now seen, thanks to research over last 30 years, as an important way to cope with trauma and distress. Nurturing children's spirituality, we can help them to find constructive meanings of reality around them in this difficult situation, cope with the losses suffered, with the uncertainty regarding their future, set proper priorities in life based on their ethical values, find peace and hope. Help children develop their growth mindset by teaching them that difficult situations are part of the learning and growth process. And I was happy Robbie underlined that earlier. Challenges they face may be an opportunity for their personal development, to better know themselves and the others around, to discover new skills and hobbies, to reflect on their path, to reflect on the skills or attitudes they can improve. And not the last, support parents and caregivers, because parents play a critical role in children's well-being, in the way they relate to the remote school and to all the changes in their life. It's important to promote positive parenting without punishment. It's important to support parents and caregivers to understand their responsibility in their children's online school involvement, to emotionally connect with their children, to offer them extra attention and care, praise them frequently, to manage their challenging behaviors, and to keep them safe from online perpetrators or harmful content. It sounds like the second job for parents, but it's very important this period to be more supportive and to invest more in parents, because they have a crucial role in children development during this period. Thank you.
Laura, thanks so much for these very concrete ideas on how communities can support children, faith communities, also organizations, and very concrete on parents and caregivers. There are a few questions coming up, and that would be good for you to respond. But one of the questions was precisely on if we have seen or you have seen an increase on domestic violence or on children, and I would like you to maybe build on this later on, Laura. I think these very concrete responses are very helpful for those maybe here in the discussion as parents, as organizations, on what can be done on this particularly response to the well-being of children spiritually. So we're moving to our next panelist, and Mustafa, you can follow on this.
Thank you very much, Maria Lucia. Thank you, Laura, the last panelist and speaker, for your insightful contribution. The next panelist is Fatmire Adjari from Macedonia. And Fatmire, violence against children at home and online has increased during the lockdown, during the COVID-19. I saw one of the attendees asking a question on the chat space there, asking about this particular issue and what is being done to address this. What has been the impact on children in Macedonia, and what kind of responses have been provided by civil society organizations like yours? How can organizations help mitigate the impact in the long term on children and young people, with specific reference to your country, Fatmire?
Thank you very much, Mustafa, and thank you all of you. It's really a pleasure to be here and to listen all these presentations and somehow to have again the feeling that we are all together and we are learning from each other's experiences. Shortly, I will share with you the activities that Children's Embassy conducted during this period and still is ongoing on this hard period, which is for, as I assume, for all of us the same. Due to the state emergency in the country in the beginning of March, because of the coronavirus, Children's Embassy Međaši had to redirect the activities toward the needs of children's pupils, students, and their best interest. We, as Children's Embassy, started from the most vulnerable group, the children that use the services from the services of Children's Embassy Međaši and their families, who are in social risk. And during the lockdown, even those that had a job and could earn minimal income lost their jobs. So we, as organization, took a decision. All the activities that we had planned for, all the materials that we had planned for workshops and for other activities, to reallocate on supporting these families by sending them aid, even in food, hygienic means, but also in school materials and social games for children. All these were important and needed for the families, but when we come to school materials, children and the social games, children were more happy, because on this on this group of children, the last that can come to mind to the people who help is materials for school and social games, because mainly they have not the primary needs for life. And this was very well appreciated for them. After that, we had the concern about the long time staying home of children and parents and the time that they are spending together. That's why we came in an idea to create a group which could inspire children and parents to share creative ideas and games in Facebook and Instagram, and we called it Together at Home. It was accepted quite positive from the parents and children who were sharing their activities, their games, and inspiring other parents. Till now, there are about 2,670 some parents that are sharing their games, their initiatives, their creation and inspirations of recycling, redoing, and creating. But I have to mention that on the policy of this group, we have noted that we do not support activities that initiate violence or are connected with militarization, and we do delete all the posts that include these things. Also, while creating this this group, we were aware that not all the children have approach to the internet. We all the time pay attention to the vulnerable groups of children. That's why we noted the opportunity that children that do not have approach to the internet can send their creation via post. And when we create an online exhibition, we will include their creations also. That online exhibition we are planning to post on the web page of Children's Embassy Međaši. And also we are aware that unfortunately home is not the safest place for all the children, especially in the families that violence is present. But imagining the fact that they're obligated to stay at home longer, it becomes more difficult for them. Due to this, Children's Embassy made a short video which was sent to national and local televisions, social medias as well, where the mascot of Međaši, called Pušavko, encouraged children to and youth to call on the SOS Child Helpline, which works in the Children's Embassy for 27 years now, and ask for support and help if there is needed by the children. And on the SOS line for children and youth, response our colleagues, psychological colleagues who offer help to the children who ask and support them. Beside the video, beside this video, Children's Embassy launched one more video where the mascot of Međaši encouraged children to stay at home and to be productive and to be creative and to take care about their personal hygiene. Also to help at home and to be cooperative. We could see that this video had really, both of the videos had impact on the target group. We, for the first time, after a long time ago, we used to have calls on the SOS Child line for children and youth. But it was very interesting because we had a small child calling and asking from the mascot help because she was worried because her cousin didn't wash her hands because she didn't know how to wash properly. And that's why they are asking now help from Pušavko, which means that we have reached the target group and somehow made us happy. All this period we had a lot of troubles also. One of the problems who we receive as calls on the SOS helpline, phone line for children and youth, was meetings of the children from divorced parents with a parent that is not guardian. Somehow the parents who are guardians misuse the situation with the pretense that they are worried about the children for not being infected. And also here in Macedonia, the lockdowns during the weekends were like from Friday till Monday morning, and they misuse the situation with the pretense that they cannot send during that time their children. But the initiative, for shared parenthood after divorce came with a public reaction about this situation, and of course, Children's Embassy Međaši supported it. The other thing that that we could see on the calls on the SOS line was number of sexual abuse cases who were reported. They were more increased this period. But as from the explanation of the parents that were calling, and my colleagues, my psychological colleagues assumed that these were not sexual abuses during the lockdown, but it has happened before. But now this period was staying at home with the parents, and a conversation, during the conversation, they have been encouraged to report these cases. Also, the problem with the lack of social workers was another problem during the lockdown, especially on the time when the institutions were working with reduced capacities due to the parents with children younger than 10 years who had to stay at home, and other restrictions of the government and due to the pandemic. This we see as challenge for the coming period if the limitation of movement comes in consideration. For example, from one center we had only 4 calls. which really makes us worried. During all this time, Medjashi came with a few public reactions due to the consequences of online learning, the schedule of the classes, homework overload, then disrespect of the employees toward the parents whose children do not go to kindergarten but before were taken care by babysitters, and now due to the restrictions they cannot be able to be cared. Knowing the situation with poverty in Macedonia, we were aware that there are a lot of children who attend school but do not have approach to the internet and to electronic devices. And this means that they are totally excluded from the learning process this period. This was confirmed from the teacher and schools whom we work with. Due to this, we made efforts and tried to provide electronic devices to these students, but we don't have any concrete results till now, according to this question. And in order to find out the experiences of the parents with the online classes, we prepared a questionnaire where we are asking from parents to share the effects of this kind of learning and suggestions for the coming school years, which results we are planning to present to the Ministry of Education, and in order to decide for better conditions for the school year 2020-2021. This is in short lines what I could share with you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Radmila. I know it's not easy to to tell all the work that it's been doing, but you have given us very good insights on the issues. And I see at the family level, as you mentioned, children are always affected by several factors. And as you mentioned, with very concrete examples, the digital divide as well. So these are very good inputs. I would like to go, there are several questions. I would like to move into some of the questions that have been asked. There are some specific questions and some more general. And so maybe we start with Rabbi Stanley. There is a particular question for you, and it's, what is the future of faith engagement and coexistence, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic? And if I may, Rabbi Stanley, I would like to also ask you to think of the stigmatization of some communities. We have been talking about most vulnerable communities, so the stigmatization of some of the communities, faith communities. So what does this mean in the future for coexistence? What does it mean for the relations between different migrant communities and local host communities? So how do you see this part, Rabbi Stanley?
Rabbi Stanley, kindly unmute.
Rabbi Stanley, can you hear us? So in the meantime, maybe we have a question for the children. And so one of the questions in particularly for Milana, then how do you think your community can do better to support children and young people, particularly those mostly affected by the pandemic?
I think that community also faced with something new, and everyone was focused at start, so we can not expect for our problems to be solved immediately. Apart from what other panelists mentioned, and apart from education activity, I think that community should maybe organize more activities for spending quality time during this difficult time. Maybe organize fun online activities for so that children don't have to be focused on negative information, and all the time. And that is why I love and support Somber Educational Center, because there I get a chance to volunteer and make someone time better and not focus only on negative news. Because apart from children and style want time to play, joke, and have fun.
Very good, Milana. I think that's a very good input that we have been seeing a lot of negative news. And of course, when being in lockdown and without access to your friends and to your normal reality, this affects you and young people. So that's a very good request. Mohammed, similarly to you, what you like to see happening and doing by different organizations for the support of children? What would be your request also for communities and organizations? Mohammed, can you unmute yourself?
Maybe as Mohammed is unmuting himself. We can't hear you, Mohammed. Can you hear me, Maria Lucia?
I can hear you, but we cannot hear Mohammed.
Yeah. Mohammed, maybe I ask the next question as Mohammed try to sort out the technical issue.
I think Maria Lucia, Rabbi Kochen is back on.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
Okay, if you can.
Okay, we'll come to Rabbi Kochen. The next question is to Igor Mitrovic, and this is from Reverend Fred Nyabera, and he's asking, how have you dealt with the digital divide as you work with the Roma children?
Yeah. So we go to Rabbi Stanley first, and then we go to Mohammed and to Igor. Rabbi, please.
Okay, I'll try and be fairly brief. What's most important about communal cohesion is to educate the people, the indigenous population, that they shouldn't see the migrants as a threat. The migrants have had a very hard life, a very hard time, and if they are refugees fleeing for legitimate reasons, then we should extend a welcoming hand to them. Obviously, the COVID crisis and increased stigmatization, it hasn't helped matters, and has been a very unfortunate byproduct of what are fairly harmonious relations. There are ups and downs, there are blips in England, but there's, I would say, reasonably harmonious relations. Again, notwithstanding issues that there are that have been arisen, and something we must all be vigilant about. And of course, anti-Semitism, one of them, included in that. And we just had an example of that yesterday with this rapper making anti-Semitic comments on Twitter, now on Facebook. So it's something we've got to be continuously aware of and try and overcome by educating people, giving people the opportunity to have forums and meet people and try and work together and build a better world.
Thank you, Rabbi Stanley. Mohammed, can you now? Please go ahead, Mohammed. Can you unmute yourself? I think you're ready to speak. Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
I think that adults must listen to us and give us more opportunities and to spend time with us more and listen to our needs. My message to children is to be together and to speak about positive practice.
Thank you. I think this is a wonderful, Mohammed, more time to listen to children and young people. I think the paradox also with the confinement and this is that families spend more time together, but I think children have at times said that they feel less listened to during this time. So it's a good reminder, Mohammed. Thank you for that.
I think that the next question is to Igor Mitrovic. Do you want me to repeat the question, Igor? And it's Reverend Fred Nyabera asking the question, how have you dealt with the digital divide, especially with the Romas?
I said 75% of them didn't have any device at all in their household. The only thing we managed to do so far since March is to try to create some kind of a joint approach to the business community and to the internet providers, so that they, as the most natural donors, provide devices of decent quality and stable internet. And I think that the cross-sectoral approach is the only possible. The real thing I dream of is to have a front of created of faith communities and faith-based organizations doing this advocacy and approach together. I think this will be specifically powerful, but so far it didn't happen. I guess we are kind of maybe too passive, but I see this is a thing to do.
Thank you. There's a question here that I believe should go to Fatmire. Fatmire, domestic violence and domestic abuse have been on the rise. What are faith-based organizations and civil society organizations doing to mitigate this? Is there progress? What has been the approach of the government on this? This is one of the questions asked by one of the attendees.
Well, according to the domestic violence, we are aware that it's arisen this period. But as I said, on the phone line, we do not have reports on this issue still. I don't know whether it's connected to the holidays that started and the people are not, we are not on lockdown now, but we will see the consequences from September and on. But we are raising the awareness of children, of people, as I said, with the videos that we launch on the national, local, and social media also. And just, I mean, if they see anything, any violence, they can report, they can ask help, and we repeat that their secret is our secret, so they can be sure that we will not share, and they, somehow they can be safe. But we are afraid that now that the private area where they can be alone and share has been limited during this period. So the consequences of this pandemic, I'm afraid we will see later. But as I said, this is, we raise the awareness to the people and children.
Thank you very much.
There are maybe a couple of questions more to finalize for all the panelists, Mustafa, and for the panelists. So there is one question here in particular, in a couple of words, and the participant is saying, some of you have addressed this, but in a couple of words, what distinguishes your work during this global pandemic as part of a faith-inspired organization from the work of any other service providing organization? I think, Igor, you were trying to build on that. So if you have just a couple of words on this. And the last question to finalize for all of you is in terms of collaboration. And I think this builds also on interfaith collaboration, but also collaboration with governments. Zvonimira, you are working with the government. So how do you see the collaboration between faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, UN agencies, government, children's organizations, to support and better respond to the impact of COVID-19 on children? So should I go with Zvonimira first?
Yes, if you want. Okay, so I think in Bosnia and Herzegovina we are well organized because we have on a state level an interfaith council of all religions and faith communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they are collaborating with the NGOs and the UN agencies and with the government, which is very important because government is financing interfaith council of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So they are all united in one message and in a one goal for our children and for our youth. And also we have our youth councils around the Bosnia and Herzegovina who are all connected in an interfaith dialogue, because in our state it's living on three ethnicities: Croats, Serbs, and Bosniaks, and we are all collaborating in every public country institution and also in NGOs, I think the collaboration for example in Junior C Bosnia and Herzegovina in collaboration with our government is very strong, and with our presidency, because I didn't mention it in a presentation because it was in a past period of COVID-19 in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We're collaborating with them in managing and in collecting one of our laws of Bosnia and Herzegovina about children and youth education in a school. We want to manage that every school should celebrate all of 4 main days of Arigat International, which is very important to us and for all parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we have a lot of and a big power in a work of it, and also like 5 years ago, we were collaborating with them on managing one law for volunteering, where every student now have their law as a volunteer, because a lot of students and Roma population of children in Bosnia and Herzegovina were used for our work and used for our free work. So we managed one law where everyone should have volunteer books in their volunteering with us, and also they were in collaboration with the interfaith dialogue and also the religious leader in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because they all wanted to protect especially Roma children who are vulnerable in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we had concrete ways of collaboration with the government, with the presidency, and in interfaith council of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you very much. And there we come to the end of this regional webinar series. And today,
maybe the others will respond before we close.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, let's hear your final thoughts then. Before we
quickly. I know we're pressed by time, but maybe a little bit.
Thank you.
So, Fatmire, you want to respond to that question?
To the question about cooperation with institutions and with faith leaders, well, I'm afraid that according to the faith leaders, we didn't have cooperation. I mean, not we as an organization, but on state level. But with institutions, we did cooperation and collaboration with the Ministry of Education. We are in communication with them and consultations about the ongoing period and how was it and how will it would be.
And Laura, you want to go next?
Need to unmute.
Sorry. Well, I was thinking now that I was reflecting of my experience as a psychotherapist during this time, and I never felt so close by the spirituality and faith and how and I never been so aware of how religion and faith can be a resource for children resilience and generally the spirituality. And I noticed the same in Rabbi's speech mentioning psychotherapists. So I think we should not look for what we have special. I hope many other organizations are doing what we are doing, because children need that, and I think we all have to come together and to find our part of competencies, because only together we can offer children what they expect. Because in this moment I saw a lot of children being disappointed and feeling that they are left alone. I think only few countries can say they managed exemplary education, health system, and everything. So children are feeling that, and I think we have to be aware that our responsibility is to not disappoint them.
Thank you. Igor, do you want to go next?
I think this is the way to go. If the target group of children we are serving together is of a specific, or majority of them is a specific religious affiliation, in our case Muslim, our role of all other faith actors is to recognize this and to see if any kind of support is needed to the Muslim community, because we cannot really do the proper support to children encompassing not only educational needs but spiritual needs and everything else. The Muslim community has to do it, and in the best interest of the children is all other faith actors to support the Muslim community so that it can do the only thing they can only do. I think this is the thing I've been seeing from time and again, and I'm not happy that this hasn't happened yet, that all the others who are maybe more numerous in our area or more developed have not taken responsibility to see that this is the role for us to do. And I believe this is the way to go.
Thank you. Rabbi Stanley?
Yes, I think on one level, I think as far as how we can help children the best is to make sure they're not isolated. In a practical sense, our communities, one of the first casualties of COVID were the children. Once our synagogue started to reopen, one of the rules for entry was that children could not be admitted. And that's actually heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for our community. One of the reason for that is the children couldn't, we couldn't guarantee that children would sit in the place and not sort of wander around and be a danger for themselves and of course be a carrier to others. So that's the sort of a byproduct of the tragedy of the situation. So I think to try and remedy that, we have to make sure that children aren't isolated somehow, and make sure that they can have their activities together, whether maybe outside in parks if weather permits. Now the summer's here. Or other ways, as the strict restrictions will hopefully ease, there'll be other ways of bringing them together and bringing them together into the synagogue as well. So I think we have to watch that very carefully. On a macro level, if you like, on a sort of governmental level, on an organisational level. I mean, I know the chief rabbi here in England has got a man who's specially an advisor, specially appointed for what is called external relations. And they have links with the Council of Christians and Jews that get together, Muslim groups, and I've been involved with something called Faiths United, where I've been contacting people of other faiths. It happens Christian and Muslim, but it could be any faith, and just to talk through mutual problems and issues and challenges that we've had over this period, and try and see where we can go from here. So if we keep talking to each other, hopefully we can learn from each other and look at our challenges and be able to better deal with them.
And any final words, Milana and Mohammed? Milana and Mohammed, any final words?
No, thank you for this meeting, and it's my pleasure to be part of this webinar.
Milana?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak and listen to the voice of children.
Mustafa, over to you.
Thank you, Maria Lucia. Thank you very much to all the panelists, to those who had time to attend this regional webinar series. And today we were looking at and hearing participants and commentators and workers from Europe, how faith-inspired organizations in Europe are supporting, protecting, and empowering children during the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much, Mohammed from Bosnia, Milana from Serbia, Zonimira from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Rabbi Stanley from UK, Igor from Serbia, Laura from Romania, and Fatmire from Macedonia. I thank all of you for having found time, prepare to share with us what you are doing in your countries around Europe in addressing the challenges that children are facing during this time of COVID pandemic. We look forward to seeing you again in the next webinar series. We will be moving around the world and we'll be listening to and sharing with the other faith leaders and grassroots workers and actors like yourselves in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America, and Asia. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you again. God bless you.